Don't worry, this is going to be a bit of a tongue-in-cheek rant this week, but Etsy have done a couple of things recently that have annoyed me and made me a bit grumpy, so tongue-in-cheek it may be, but it's still going to be a bit of a rant, specifically on two topics, localization and the advice that Etsy is giving out with regards to pricing. Which one shall we start with? Well, before we do that, hello, my name's Kim. If you're new here, welcome back. If you're not, last week I was knitting socks for my mental health. I still am. But yes, I'm Kim. This is the Coffee and Craft podcast where I rock up each week. I chat all things to do with running a handmade business while I drink coffee and craft. Does what it says on the tin, really. And as I said, I'm going to be grumbling at you about localization, which is affecting me here in the UK at the moment, and their interesting advice on pricing. I'm going to put my knitting down. We're going to start with that one. Recently, last week, I got an email from Etsy entitled, "Get your personalised pricing insight." Go on then. This should be fun. And it's an email that says, it's entitled, "How do your prices stack up?" Well, I have to factor in your many fees, Etsy, so quite well, thanks. And it says, and I quote, "There's a new personalised pricing insight available in your shop manager. There you can see how your prices compare to similar items on Etsy. Then you have the option to quickly and easily bulk edit your prices to keep your shop competitive. Prices that appeal to shoppers can help boost sales." And then it says PS in little italic font. "We're testing out this new tool, so your personalised insight is only available for a limited time." Good, because it's rubbish. Shall we find out why? Let's find out why. And the first thing I'm met with is this page, which says, "Buyers typically pay less for listings like these." And then it lists 15 of my listings, which is a lot of my listings. I don't have many items, so that's pretty much all of my items Etsy are saying are overpriced. Good start. So if we look at the first lot, we can see that there's a lot of stick and stitch patch packs that I've got there. Now, interestingly, they are priced higher because I have fees to pay. Etsy, your fees cost money. So to make sure that the fees are factored in, that means having to put the price up. Sorry, I know, I'm such a selfish cowbag. How dare I try and make profit from my own items? See this house? This cold, damp, dark house? It doesn't pay for itself, Etsy. Stick and stitch patches help. And then it shows you other items. But here's the thing. When I've compared like for like, they're not actually like for like, not always. So you've got some stick and stitch patches here. Well, first of all, some of these are priced so low that I know that these people cannot be making a huge amount of money. Because if you take off the fees and the cost of the materials, that doesn't leave you with a huge amount. I mean, I don't make a huge amount for my stick and stitch patches priced as they are. So if they're pricing even less, what? Also, a lot of the images on stick and stitch patches is clip art. It's just artwork that they've found elsewhere and they've just printed off onto stick and stitch stabilizer and they're selling them as supplies. It's a thing. My designs are my own. They are literally my hand-drawn designs. So there's that. So not completely like for like. However, I will give Etsy the benefit of the doubt. I can see why they would show my stick and stitch patches next to someone else's that are similar, because that's what they said, similar items. So far, so good. Kinda. And then we have my Mother's Day kit, which again, they've linked it to other kits. Now, when I was looking at this, I was looking at it on my phone and I could see the pictures that they were showing here clearer. And two of the items that they're showing here are cross-stitch, so not the same as hand embroidery. Similar, but not the same. And some of the prices, again, are very low when you're taking into consideration things like fees and the materials and then the postage costs. How are these people making anything? I don't know. And then we have my PDFs, which granted I appreciate are pricier than your regular ones, and the ones that they're showing me are literally less than a couple of quid. It's insane. But again, it's my design, and I also know that there is a danger with anything that you send out digitally. Once somebody's purchased it, there's nothing stopping someone from selling it and then copying it or what have you. There's no protection there. So my attitude is, if I've made the effort to create an original design, if it is going to get copied at some point in the future, I want to have made it pay for itself. And I do think that it is unique because of it being my unique design, and also, again, fees. I want to make some kind of a profit from my items. Otherwise, I'm not running a business. I'm running a hobby at best. So, tough. Okay, and this is where it gets fun. So then they've got one of my hand-painted and hand-embroidered project bags, and they're saying it is overpriced in comparison to other project bags. One here is £8.49. I'm not even sure that would cover the cost of materials, let alone anything else. But these bags that they are comparing them to are just plain fabrics, as in they are pre-printed, and you buy the materials with the designs on them. You are not painting them up yourself or embroidering on them, which takes time. Moving on. Oh, this one is my favourite. Then we come down to an embroidered hoop that I have, and they're comparing it to 2 sweatshirts and a pin badge, because that's similar. What? Got another personalised hoop. What is that? Is that a hat? That's a personalised embroidered top, sweater, jumper. Okay. My point is that they are supposed to at least compare my items with similar items. And they've done that with some of them, but other ones they are sort of apples and oranges, and others they are apples and aeroplanes. They're just not. So I think it's fair to say that this is yet another thing that has been done by AI, automated, bot, whatever you want to call it. And from the looks of things, I would say that they have used a mix of image recognition and keywords to find their similar items. It doesn't appear to me that there have been any human eyeballs curating this at all. I know, shocking. But it just means that this is extremely flawed. Now this is why it annoyed me. That wasn't the part that annoyed me. That just made me chuckle, because if that isn't just Etsy being Etsy, then I don't know what is. What bothered me is that they are, presumably, sending this email out to a lot of people who might actually take their advice. I mean, going back to the beginning of the email, don't forget I said they suggested that you could lower your prices by, and I'm reading, 5%, 10%, or 15%. This is not how you run a business. Now, I know that Etsy don't give a flying fig about our businesses. They just want the sale. There are some sellers on Etsy who are not quite as well versed in Etsy's nonsense as some of us are. So they might actually take their advice and trust it and break their shops and their businesses as a result. And these are people who want to build their business. They want to grow their businesses so that they can one day quit their job and do it full time. And they're never going to be able to do that if they're constantly jumping through Etsy's hoops. So much for the tongue in cheek. I'm getting properly angry. But when it comes to things like prices, you can't play. And it only seemed like a few months ago that they were bringing out changes that were sort of hoping to increase the quality on the site and getting people to charge their worth a bit more. And I got excited by that because it seemed very pro-handmade in a lot of ways. And it just feels like they're suddenly going backwards again. So it's like, oh, are we trying to boost numbers for a investor presentation or something? Or are the figures behind the scenes at Etsy starting to look so dire that they're just willing to get any sales now and to hell with what happens to Etsy and everybody on it long term? Because that's kind of how it feels. It feels a bit like everyone's acting a little bit desperately. Okay, shall we move on and try and lighten the atmosphere? I think that might be an idea. If you're still watching this, all I would say, if you've seen that email and you were thinking about lowering your prices, don't. Or if you want to lower your prices, please do it for you, or after having spoken to someone that you trust, someone who has your best interest at heart, because I promise you that's not Etsy. All right, localization. Oh. Now, I knew that localization was a thing. It has been for a very long time. It was actually one of the biggest changes that was brought in, was it 2016? Or was it before that? I can't remember. It was about then-ish. And it was one of the big changes on Etsy that halved my income and just broke everything. I did a video about this last week where I was talking about diversification and why I started diversifying, and that was it. That was it. All of my eggs were in the Etsy basket, and Etsy went, puh. Lesson learned. Up until that point, my customer base had been almost 50-50 UK and the US. And when localization came in, my US customers were almost shut off. And I very rarely got a sale from, internationally, let alone just the US. And as I say, that halved my income. They have sort of taken their foot off of that in recent years, but then put it back on in the recent year gone. It's hard to tell exactly when it started. Etsy, over the last Christmas period, Q4 in 2023, they did actively come out and say, as we get closer to the holiday season, we are going to be ramping up the localization a bit more. It was like, okay, well, that actually makes sense, so that's fine. But it made me realise that they've not actually, for me at least, switched it off. And I do remember thinking even before that, and I don't know if any other UK sellers have noticed this as well, I realised that for some time I haven't been selling to the US. I don't remember the last time I sold a physical product to the US. I sell digital products occasionally to the US, but not physical ones, not ones that I have to package up and send out. And I was like, I'm going to do some looking and I'm going to find out how many physical product sales I've made to the US or internationally in a time frame. And I will compare that with my Shopify website and we'll see. You want to know what I found? I hope so, because I'm going to tell you. So I took the same time frame and I had a look on Etsy, and we'll do Etsy first. I made 7 physical product sales to the UK and 1 to the US. So this was a 3-month time frame, and I did take it from last year. Now I did sell another 5 products to the US and Australia in that time frame, but they were all digital products. I've only sold 1 physical product internationally and 7 to the UK. Okay, well again, that could be the postage issue, or it could be that people aren't willing to wait for their products, so they might see my items but they don't necessarily want to buy them because I'm from the UK. Hold that thought. We're moving on to Shopify. Exact same time frame. I can't read my writing, 8 sales of physical products to the UK and 10 to the US. So if it was an issue of people not being willing to wait a little longer for their orders, or pay a little extra for their orders, then surely it would be the same on Shopify as it is on Etsy. But it's not. On my website, my sales are exactly as I would expect them to be. More or less 50-50 UK, US. But on Etsy, all of my physical products get sold to the UK. Where am I going with this? Nowhere. Other than to say I hate localization, and I didn't realise it was as bad on Etsy as it is. I didn't realise it had affected me for as long as it has. Now, I didn't go back and check out the entire year of sales. I kind of want to, but I was doing this last night when I was meant to be relaxing, so I got bored and didn't. But I will be coming back to that one. There are a lot of sellers who rely on their international customers for their revenue. And if Etsy's just constantly flipping the switch on and off and there's no way of knowing when they're doing that, that's going to mess with your sales. I could talk for ages about why I think it might be, but ultimately I have no clue. And I don't care, to be brutally honest. I just care about the results. And all I know is that Etsy seems to be pretty good for me in terms of domestic sales for my physical products, but rubbish in terms of my international sales. So maybe you can see why these two things combined at the same time has just left me feeling a little bit grumpy about Etsy once more. And I woke up this morning and I was reading through some comments that I had on YouTube, and somebody asked me about my thoughts on Folksy, which is another marketplace platform here in the UK. And it's been around for a while. I mean, it's been around since the early days of Etsy, actually. And I was on there for a long time, but I didn't get any traction there. People didn't really know about it. They didn't really go to the shop unless, again, I sent people there. But I think fast forward to now, I was thinking to myself, it's like, well, I have to send my own traffic and generate my own sales to get any traction on Etsy. So why is that any different to Folksy now? And if I'm only getting sales from the UK on Etsy, would it be better for me to move my stuff onto Folksy? I don't know. Well, I do know. The answer is I already have my website, so I'm not going to be doing that. But it did make me think that I used to write off something like Folksy because it was only good for UK sales and maybe as long as you were sending your own traffic then. But as I say, that seems to be the case with Etsy. Etsy's supposed to have the edge because it can bring you in organic sales, except that it doesn't seem to be doing that. And it also has access to customers worldwide, except they're shutting you off from that. So what's left? Not to mention that I can sell things cheaper on my website because I don't have all of the miscellaneous Etsy fees to contend with. And that means that I can pass that saving on to my customers. You want to know why things are slightly cheaper on my website? That's why. The difference are the fees. And the reason why I put the prices up on Etsy are so that I can pay the fees. Etsy freaking, not allowing me to... Basically, I think it's fair to say that if I didn't have my website already, I would be looking into creating one for sure. I'm angry knitting now. I'm going to put this down because otherwise I'm going to make a mistake and it's going to be Etsy's fault. All right, fella my lads, I did warn you that this was going to be a bit of a ranty one, but like I said, Etsy made me grumpy and I needed to vent, so I thought I would make a video and vent at you. Sorry. I think over the last few months I've just really got my hopes up again that Etsy might be sorting itself out, and then they do something like this and I'm reminded once again that probably not. Which reminds me, I actually made a video this time last year, talking about how Etsy compared to my website, and I think I'd only been running it for a few months, so I was just comparing it a few months in. I'll link to that here. I'm going to do another one, but this time a year in, so that I can properly compare. So if you have any questions on that, drop them below and I'll make sure I'll answer them. Until then, thanks for listening to my rant and hopefully I'll see you over there. Bye.